long, however you want.
Notice, in accordance with the new COPPA regulations, this episode of Quoth the Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we might feature is kid-friendly, the context of the episode is to address adults, inform them of said content, for them to research as consumers in service of their youth, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There's also the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well, rated TV 16 and up. And welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven. I'm your host, Lewis Brightraven, 28-year professional writer, illustrator, editor, and talent scout in comics, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. Tonight, we have an esteemed guest, also as much experience, if not more than me. Mr. David Campiti is in the house tonight, founder of Glass House Graphics, and I believe he's also the founder of Innovation Comics, and we're going to invite him in right now.
Hey there, hi there.
Hello, David.
Good to be here.
I am correct. You were also founder of Innovation, right?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that was back in 1988.
Oh, wow. So you've been there longer than I have. Okay.
I started in the business in 1982. I was writing stories for Pacific Comics. I was writing Superman stories for Julie Schwartz back in 84.
Okay. Yep. You were definitely before me. When you see here, I was thinking when you founded Glass House, like I said, I was just stepping into the business when you were forming Glass House. Because I was in Central Michigan University, and I was finishing up my education and working for the late Gary Reed over at Caliber Press at the time.
Sure.
So, alrighty. Part of the reason we invited David in this evening was we both are members of a Facebook group called the Comic Book Editors Alliance, and the founder, Steve Calais, invited David to post some conversation pieces, basically expressing some of his thoughts on what he saw as things that need to be addressed in the industry. And some of the reaction I thought was a little bit, well, it was like, did they read the piece that he was saying? Or do we need to just have someone explain this? No, better yet, why don't I just have David on and let's have him elaborate on what he was talking about? That would be the smartest and the most effective method. So what exactly was it that you said that got everybody kind of frustrated?
I'm not sure, because what I wrote is not what they seem to have read.
Okay, then let me go ahead and see if I can share what it was that they're here we go. Here we are. Is it shared? Yes. The biggest behind-the-scenes comics problem I've seen over the past decade or two has been the loss of even basic professional technical skills, from editing, writing, storytelling, artwork, coloring, and production.
Want me to read this?
Go ahead. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Go ahead.
As comic creation has got easier through computer innovations, it's meant that folks who aren't ready for prime time are in prime time without having to learn the basics. We have artists who are reinventing the wheel of storytelling, delivering layouts at a level being cranked out in 1939. because they've never learned at the feet of or studied the works of the masters who came before them. As a result, storytelling that was so powerful in the 50s, such as Will Eisner's great work, or the 60s and 70s with the power of Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, Neil Adams, the best of John Buscema, the cinematic skills of Steranko and Paul Gulacy, are all but lost on many of today's crop of artists.
Okay. John Norris, one of our regular viewers, says good evening to us.
Hello, John.
Yes. Now, there's 88 comments. We're not going to go through all these 88 comments.
No, but I love the one that's showing up where this one guy just says false.
Yes, Matt Sardo. Oh,
It's wait a minute. What was false about that? And how was his experience in this more than minds that he brings to it? So I'm curious. I wanted to know more.
Here we go. The sentence that he says, this sentence makes no sense. What is a basic professional technical skill?
Being able to read a script and draw it correctly, having a basic storytelling sense, understanding perspective, being able to communicate with the editor and the writer, understanding perspective, understanding foreshortening. All of these are basic professional skills.
Among other things, yes. Yeah, I think that's, so many, there's different levels of professional technical skill, and not just technical skill, but I don't know, how do I put this? A sense of understanding what it is you're doing and what your job is in conjunction to the project.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that you're always working in service to the story. A lot of people don't seem to understand that. They're and I don't know, it seems like they're fighting over pecking order of who's more important in the art team. A lot of the time. And I see a lot of segregation between artists, and editors are actually reinforcing that segregation rather than breaking it down and getting.
Yeah, it's something I don't understand. Almost like what was happening at DC in the 1960s, where the artists never talked to the writers never talked to the artists, the editor reigned supreme, and you ended up with a lot of books that really weren't very good.
And a lot of artists, if you start listening to artist podcasts, are saying that exact same thing. They're saying, yeah, I don't communicate with the people anymore. I don't know why I don't.
And from my perspective, it doesn't make sense, because most of the comics that I've written over the past 30 years have been with artists that I know, that I work with. Because one of the things of getting to know an artist is a writer can write to the artist's strengths, find out what the artist likes to draw, do things that are going to end up being the best for the story visually, which of course is going to improve the writing, whether it means that you suddenly are finding yourself having to write up to that level, or it's simply, wow, the storytelling is so good from this artist who knows my rhythms that I don't have to write too many dialogue balloons or captions or whatever to explain what's going on. I can do other things to give another layer to the story.
Exactly. Another level of depth to the story. Exactly. Another thing that he says, what is prime time and who are you talking about? Well, first off, it's not about who. We don't need to sit here and point fingers and be counterproductive and throw people under a bus. That was not the point of his statement. I knew that when I read it.
Yeah. I'm not going to name names of people. How does that help that person to ridicule them? It doesn't.
No. Talking to them one-on-one, privately, or even publicly if necessary, but preferably, in a one-on-one or small group, and discussing things is one thing. But separate thing when that person's not around, that's foolishness. Again, he's like, art is subjective and goes through cycles. That has nothing to do with it. Yes, art is subjective. It does go through cycles. But for the last 30 years, we have seen a heavy over-reliance on a very set, I don't know what kind of style do we want to call it? The post-image style?
Yeah,
I mean, I hate saying that because it's not fair to the image founders necessarily.
Yeah,
it's not
but,
fair.
Yeah. What I mean by in my thing there about reinventing the wheel is quite simply, you can go through the best of what people have done. The dramatics and foreshortening that Gil Kane or Neil Adams or John Buscema have done, the power Jack Kirby put into everything. And you'll learn from osmosis, from studying stuff, from reading the comics, and incorporate the best of that into your own. Where you have artists who have never seen that stuff. If it's older than 5 years old, they haven't bothered to look back. And so as a result, they don't know that you can do the dramatic foreshortening or that you can do this big action. So as a result, the level of body language, gesture, expression, and so forth is like watching a stage play from the fifth row. I see a lot of comics with that level of excitement, or as I said, I think in a different forum, comics used to have this big, powerful, dramatic action from the best of the artists. And when TV tried to do it in the 70s, the Captain America movie, the Spider-Man TV series, all that, it was this low budget, no action, no power, really embarrassing to the comic fans stuff. Now, the movies have the big dramatic comic book action, and the comic books look like the 1970s TV shows.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Not all of them, but
no, not all of them. No,
this isn't about the good stuff. This isn't about the great stuff. This is about the people that are trying to break in, or the people who have maybe reached a certain level on the lower tier books in the business, and then are becoming frustrated that they're not making it up to the next level. I get so much of that.
There's that, and then there's people. This is something I always try to teach artists. So many people try to learn the style. We got to get the style. That's what
the surface. Yeah,
the surface. And I'm like, guys, if you want to make yourself useful, I got 250 people that can do the Wildstorm look, the Top Cow look, the Bed End Studios look. Now go find somebody else and learn how that style works, and this style, and that style. 5, 6, 7, 8 different styles. Become a chameleon. You'll learn all the stuff that's familiar with all of them, and you'll become a stronger overall artist as a result.
There's another thing to that too. If you're someone like that, and artist Fabio Laguna is like that, Vincenzo Cucca out of Italy is like that. The late great Al Rio was like that. They do 7 or 8 different styles. They're never without work because you need a dead-on model Disney? Okay, they can do it. You need something in that.
Exactly. You're not getting pigeonholed.
Yeah, and so they're good to work with. They're dependable. They have great storytelling skills. Plus, they can do all these styles. They're never without a job.
Exactly. And that's even people that they go like they say, well, everybody's these people are one style. I say John Byrne. They go, well, John Byrne does one style. I said, no, he's not. He's what he's known for is the main style he does. But look over the course of his career. He started out as doing Wheelie and a Chopper Bunch after Iwao Takamoto's animation design.
Yeah.
He's done ghost work for Tom Buttiak for Funky Winkerbean, the comic strip, while Tom was in surgery, having foot surgery. He's done Wendy Pini's ElfQuest style. He's done Walt Disney stuff. He's done Disney Adventures, Mickey Mouse Adventures. He's done Popeye covers for IDW. He emulated Rob Liefeld for part of She-Hulk in an issue. That's what artists are supposed to be able to do. And if you just learn one style,
Yeah.
you're limiting yourself. Why are you doing this?
On the other hand, Neil Adams once told me, a style is everything an artist does wrong. and I laughed at that, and he said, "No, I understand what I'm talking about."
Yeah, I've heard the statement before. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Go ahead.
So he said, if they drew it perfectly, it would look like a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
So everything an artist does to interpret reality, the way they draw hair, the thicks and thins to get a sense of depth, the way they shade, put the shadow here, it looks like a comb, whatever that might be, all those interpretations of reality become what their style is.
Exactly.
And some of it is developed naturally, some of it is through the osmosis I mentioned earlier of seeing good stuff that they like and doing their own interpretation.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. Again, comprehension, reading. When I say reading, I mean not reading a page like on the surface, but reading the person's structure, reading why they lay out a page the way they do, stuff like that. That's how you do. How can you explain why you like something? A lot of artists can't tell me why they like what they like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. A lot of it's gut feeling. Yeah. And you tend not to analyze gut feelings,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
What appeals to you about this girl as opposed to that girl? They're kind of, those two girls are kind of similar. Oh, no, that one's hot. That one, yeah.
Right.
Everything is
that is subjective, true.
Yeah. You see everything through your own eyes. You live your own life.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in a commercial medium such as comics, you've got to pay attention to what's good out there. What are the editors buying? What does this writer need for this script? All these things. So in a way, that's seeing outside yourself in order to bring the best of yourself to those pages.
Right. I think that's what I was getting at, was seeing outside of ourselves. I think that's a good way to phrase it. Okay. Again, Matt and other people were saying, great storytelling in comics is out there. No one said it wasn't. Maybe David isn't looking in the right place. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I get over. People think it's an exaggeration. My God, I get over 300 submissions a week.
Hero Guy 624 says,
Hero Guy.
And Philip Burnett says, sounds like a nerve was touched. It's not so much the nerve was touched. It was just kind of a conversation that, we weren't really, I didn't understand why other people didn't understand where he was coming from when he read this. Yeah.
What I got out of it was, it's typical internet.
Mm-hmm.
I like oranges. So are you saying that you hate bananas? Well, what's wrong with you? Strawberries are great. What do you have against blueberries?
Yeah.
To do with this particular conversation, many times on my own page, I'll post a subject, something, and somebody will go off on this crazy tangent, which is more often than not, and I'll post a subject, and I'll say that is a valid thread on your page, or let's start a fresh thread on that subject. That doesn't have anything to do with this subject here.
Exactly.
So I'm not a big fan of derailing the original thread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there were a couple of other ones in there as well that were like that kind of statement. They were naming certain artists that there was nothing wrong with who they named. I went and looked at the artists that they were talking about, but it was art styles that wasn't what you were getting at.
Yeah, that stuff had nothing to do with what I was talking about. Again, derailing the subject to go on to something that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But well, if folks want to see what I am talking about, we can pull up the screen.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
All right. Well, let me try this share thing
Again.
Woohoo! All right. Is it sharing? Nope.
Yeah, just a second. There we go.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I'm going to move some stuff around.
Sure. Philip says, my apologies. I wasn't suggesting that you were being touchy so much as someone was being clearly triggered by the initial post. I hope they're
don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about that. But we get it. We're cool. We're cool, Phil.
Because people thought that I was talking about only mainstream stuff, I'm showing something that's not a mainstream stuff. This is for a kid's book.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an artist that thought he knew everything, so he did not submit pencils for approval ahead of things. He sent in the finished work, lettered and colored, and we now have to go through a 3-week-long period of correcting almost 200 problems.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's see if I can.
I'm going to go ahead and open the full screen for you there.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try something here. All right. Here's a panel. This guy's been in the business 15 years.
Again, we're not naming names.
Yeah. Okay. So a little panel like this. Why is this guy's left hand on his right arm? We have to go in and fix that. I mean, it's a small thing, but you'd think a professional. You'd think a professional would know what he's doing. Here, let's go back to this. All right, so there's this book. Let's see if I can do this correctly. I apologize. Yeah. So this book done in a kid style is a pretty simple thing. But I kid you not, 15 hours going through this book and having to fix stuff that got bumbled in the storytelling or things that got left out. Here we have a bit, the script read that her sister is in the panel bringing over, as she's packing to leave, knitting supplies, yarn and knitting needles and so forth. Maybe you'll knit a suit of armor and save the world, is the comment her sister makes. She makes it off panel. We don't see her loading any stuff, but it's needed for a scene later in the story where she pulls it out and starts knitting with it. So he didn't want to put it here. Why didn't he put her here and move the dialogue balloon over one? I don't understand it. Now we have to go in and do that. I mean, just simple stuff. Here was one where let's see if I can pull this up. Now, this character they're supposed to be at the table. We don't even see the table here. Supposed to be leaving the table with her pancakes on it to go answer the door. And she has a fork full that she's supposed to be putting into her mouth. In this panel, it should be in her mouth, and she's opening the door. We don't even see her opening the door. This balloon should be coming from over here. The door is open. She should have the fork in her mouth as she's surprised who she's seeing. In this last panel, she's supposed to be pulling the fork out and swallowing as she's just shocked that it's the Greek god Hermes has shown up at her door. So the whole effect of her reaction is lost. And in the meantime, we have magical disappearing pancakes, a fork that's gone from her right hand into her left hand, and suddenly she's doing nothing. So the door, opened by itself? I don't quite understand. So these are little things, but when you have 200 of these problems over the course of a book, they add up and make the book less than the sum of its parts. Again, poor storytelling. Character shows up. I'm Hermes, dear goddess. Your father Zeus sent me to Russia and Mount Olympus. Where are you supposed to sit? The chariot's full to bursting. Good question. I have no idea. The description for this was an establishing shot that had the chariot in full view. It's a chariot that grows wings, so they're not horses. But the chariot was supposed to be full of packages that Hermes had to deliver. So in the next panel, Hermes is supposed to be out at the large chariot, moving the boxes, the packages around to make room for this girl and her luggage. Because the artist didn't put it in and didn't bother to draw the packages in the too small chariot that he drew, this scene makes no sense. He has Hermes run around the chariot, doing absolutely nothing for no reason. So the storytelling just doesn't make sense. So,
wait, did I just see one package in the back there? Go back up. And over to the go. There's one package now in there. Or is that her suitcase?
Well, he very badly put in the background here panels of her multiple suitcases. And
then all of a sudden, all that just disappeared.
Yeah, and then, and then okay, you get here. Now, this is a story point, mind you. They're up in the air. He's fighting with the chariot because it's too heavy, and he says, "We're overweight." Now, she is supposed to say, I don't know how the dialogue got changed, "I'm not overweight, and I'm not going anywhere." Well, he throws her 2 pieces of her luggage off there, so it's no longer overweight. But how are they overweight? There was none of the packages that made them overweight are in the scene. So the entire scene ends up making no sense.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of that here. When I started reading through this and saw what a mess this was, I got the artist. I talked to everybody on Facebook Messenger. I said, "Did you read the script thoroughly before you drew it?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Do you also read the dialogue before you draw and color these books?" He said, "Yes, of course." I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Certainly." I said, "Okay, so when this says, where do this multi-headed character is being referred to? So many heads. Where do I look? The grumpy green one, the icky orange one, the impatient purple one?"
Yeah, the multi-headed Hydra. Yeah.
Yeah. Which one is supposed to be the purple one? Which one is the orange one? He did them all green. Despite the script descriptions telling him which color each head was and which expression it should have, which he totally ignored, but also which colors each one should have been.
Yeah. Okay. Beth says, I can't pronounce your last name, hon. I don't want to slaughter it. Hey, from Kevin and Beth. I'll try it. Ware? Nice to see you.
Kevin Jouer?
Jouer. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
One of my all-time best friends.
Okay.
2 of my all-time best friends, actually.
Well, thank you for coming on and watching the show, Kevin and Beth.
Yeah. Kevin is a terrific writer. He most recently co-wrote a script with David Lawrence called Gridiron Green for the Ovi Migueli Foundation, and it's a terrific script that was done for as a commercial comic to be given away.
Okay.
And always love working with Kevin.
Philip asks, would you suggest that a missing component for modern artists is overall variability? If you mean the ability to work in various styles, or not necessarily even working various styles, but figuring out how to make your style work for different assessments of different projects, then yes.
Well, you had artists in the past that were equally at home, whether they were drawing superheroes, romance, Western, science fiction, historical. They could do it all.
And they even altered their style to fit. I mean, Jack Kirby's romance comics aren't exactly the same as his superhero comics, stylistically. Yeah. Or his crime comics from the 30s aren't the same as his comics from the 50s. And part of that is evolution of his artwork style, but part of that is because certain art styles suit different genres different ways.
Exactly right. And I've been fortunate to work with a lot of terrific artists who are adaptable that way. You go through the roster of people on my website, glasshousegraphics.com.
Yes, I'm going to put that in there in a minute.
Like 200 artists on there, and quite a few of them have multiple styles and plenty of samples in various genres to prove it. And it comes back to what we said earlier. The more adaptable you are, the more employable you are.
Yes, absolutely. Let me see if I got this right. Yes, I do. I can even show your site if you want.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me go ahead and yeah, I know you're here somewhere. Where'd it go? Ah, there it is. And, I mean, you represent a lot of different people. I mean, you don't just represent comics. You represent for animation. We go to talent or services?
Yeah, talent's good. Go to pencilers.
All right, pencilers. Okay. We've got Aaron Jenkinson, Alan Patrick, Alex.
You'll be here all day. You scroll up and go all the way down to Vincenzo Cucca. That's a good one.
Is that
my first name for some reason? But,
what's his last name?
Cucca, but go down to V for Vincenzo.
Okay, V for down there. All right. Past. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Click on the art. There we go.
All righty. Yes, we see an animated style here for She-Hulk.
Yep, but you will also see a more realistic style for some horror projects.
Well, here we go. This is a completely different style.
Yeah.
For Predators.
Yeah, I showed his whole portfolio to an editor, and he said, "Oh, is this your studio?" I said, "No, that's one guy."
Yep. Here's a combination of both the kind of animated show plus a realistic for the Tiger. It's a kind of a blend of the two. See. And there we go. They don't really. Editors just go, huh? the younger ones, a lot of them. The older ones, they know what you're talking about. But
if you go back out to the his main page, so scroll down to the one that was right next to that.
This one.
Yeah.
This one.
That's a different style for High School Musical.
Yeah.
He is also an approved Disney and DreamWorks artist because he can nail the
likenesses of the actors. Yeah. And not just nail the likenesses, but nail it in an animated style and probably also a classical illustrative style, both.
Yeah. It's like somebody hired him to do Uncle Scrooge. And he said, okay, do you want the Karl Barks Uncle Scrooge or do you want the Italian Uncle Scrooge? It's two different model sheets.
Exactly.
And he can nail either one.
Yeah, a lot of stuff here. And that's just the American stuff. He's got
a French style.
A French style, which, here we go again. People who don't know the European market, so he can work in the European market as well as the American market.
He's never unemployed. Yeah, and he understands story. One of the first jobs I did with him.
Is this watercolor per chance, or is this computer colored?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, because it has a nice watercolor look to it, but you can do watercolor look in a computer these days. So I just wondered, Yeah, this is great. Now, of course, it's a little bit getting to a little bit of the risque, but that's because the European market is a little more open than that. But then here we go again with humorous. This is yet a different approach. This is him drawing you and your wife and daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he understands all aspects of it. One of his first jobs working with me was when we decided to finish up a book called Jade Warriors that I started with Mike Deodato, co-written by Mike Buckley. And we did a couple issues of it at Image. There was a couple issues that were never published, that sort of thing. But Deodato wasn't able to come back and do the final issue because he was under exclusive contract with Marvel. So Vincenzo agreed to step in. Now, Vincenzo's style doesn't match Deodato's, but he immediately picked up on all of Deodato's storytelling tricks. So the book at least looks like it was laid out by Deodato, because you can't tell the difference in the storytelling sense. So he's adaptable not just with the surface stuff, but with the thinking under the drawing.
David Lawrence asks, but what's better to be, an artist who does one style great, or an artist who has a bunch of styles that are good? Well,
that's a tough one, and Dave knows this stuff.
Yeah, my view on that is, if you only do one style, that's great, but there's a bunch of other people who can do that same style or a very similar style to it, you're not as strong a talent commercially than the person who can do a bunch of styles that are good.
On the other hand, if you're doing one style great, you're going to make more per page than the guy who is adaptable and good. He might be considered a range artist, where the top guy might earn twice as much per page. And because he's great,
how many top guys are there? I mean, if you know what I'm saying. How many top guys are there?
30.
Yeah, and there's like 250 who do a certain wheelhouse of art style.
Yeah.
So you got 200 guys that are kind of, well, what are you doing? You might do that style great, but I already have this guy over here. What else can you do?
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. And I think that a lot of artists lose that because there's so much people, there's only so many slots for a certain look.
Yeah. My worry, and what brought up this whole subject, is we have artists with a style or several styles that haven't even reached good
plateau. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I hear you. Or again, like you're saying, a person who doesn't have basic communication skills, can't comprehend a script, can't comprehend directions. How many people, you say you get like 300 submissions a week. Yeah. How many people send you nothing but pinups? Even though you say in your instructions, if you want us to review your work, send us sequential story pages.
I don't get as many as I used to, but the ones I do get say, these are nice, but I don't know anybody that's buying just pinups. And they'll say, oh, well, these were for commissions. It's like, okay, that's nice. If you're seeking commissions, but your cover note didn't tell me that you want me to look for commission jobs for you. You said you wanted a job drawing comics, but you haven't drawn any comics here. You've just drawn pinups. Draw some comics, show me those, because I need to see your sequential storytelling.
Right. Exactly. Same thing. You look for different things for different categories. There's different styles of coloring, you know.
Oh, yes.
And then there's other things. We're talking again about the technical professional skills. You go to a convention, and there's the inker sitting at the table. They're doing nothing. They're just sitting there. And I'm asking them, okay, why aren't you inking pencil sketches from other pencilers in the room? Or why aren't you, showing some of your artwork live? And a lot of them will tell me, oh, I can't do that. I got to do it on the computer. And I just, that blows my mind.
So
because it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me because you don't have your tablet and your 200 million computer brushes, you don't know how to ink on a page or something. And it's like, here's some microns, here's a brush, here's a bottle of ink, here's some water, here's some oil. Show me what you can do.
And doesn't that come back to one of my other posts that I posted?
No, it was the exact same post. You were saying an over reliance on technology.
Yeah, and it's a shame, because if your only saving grace is your crutch, then that's a big problem.
Right. And the same thing with colorists. You go to the convention and the colorists are like, I don't have anything. I didn't bring anything to color with. And I'm like, well, I've got Copics, I've got colored pencils, I've got P.H. Martins. What do you want? I don't use any of those. And I'm like, then you're not a colorist to me. You're a computer jockey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they get offended, but they have to understand what happens when you have an assignment and your computer gets a virus and your computer's not working now. Now what are you going to do? You have to have a means, a backup, even if that means going traditional. It may not be the same final results. It might just be that you get the basics done, and then when your computer's working, scan it in and finish it up in Photoshop or whatever. But you got to do something. You can't just be stagnant because we're on a deadline.
I still get clients that want us to paint comic books, like I used to do with Innovation, with Dark Shadows and Beauty and the Beast.
Like Mike Okamoto used to do
Yeah. Who still want fully painted originals. And so, of course, I have sequential artists who still do that, because they understand these things may not be asked for as much as they used to be, but it hasn't died out. And now they're bringing a specialty to the market.
Yeah. There's no Control plus Z on an ink. Well, no, there isn't. But that kind of proves our point, though.
I realize Control Z is
confidence and over reliance. Whereas when you work traditionally, you have to have a little more focus because you don't have that backup of a Control Z to fix something, or you have to understand how to fix something when you make that mistake in the traditional method. And there are ways to fix things. It's not like I ruined this page, I got to start over from scratch. That's very rare.
I had an inker that was inking mainly digitally. And I said, you're doing a beautiful line, considering I see a lot of digital inking that's just a dead weight and so forth. And I said, how much time have you spent inking physical original pages? Because that's a really nice finesse skill you have there. Well, I've never managed to do that. I think, really? Well, why not? They said, well, I didn't want to have to dip brushes or pens or any of that. I said, but there are Japanese markers and all those other things.
Right. There's brush pens. There's other things.
Yeah.
Right.
And they said, well, I really couldn't get the flow that I want. And I said, well, okay, explain it to me. How did you ink a page when you did try? Oh, you mean actually inking on paper? I said, yeah. Well, I taped down the page, and they okay, there's your first mistake. You tape down the page because your hand doesn't naturally work in every single direction.
Right.
That's the best inkers are spinning that page like a top. They're moving the page like this so that they can get the best angle on the ink line. I watch an inker named Randy Elliott. Loved his work. Worked for me in the late 80s, early 90s.
I remember Randy.
Yeah. Randy, I went to Randy's house with artist Matt Thompson, who he had been inking on Legends of the Stargrazers, doing a beautiful job. Matt would put down 4 lines. Randy knew which line out of the 4 to ink, right? And
that's what I call reading a page correctly.
Yeah. And I said, can you teach Matt how you ink his stuff? And he said, all right, just have Matt draw me a figure. So while we were talking, Matt drew a Stargrazers figure or Hero Alliance figure. And then Randy took it and he said, okay, now watch. And he started it sideways. And he went like this and turned the page. The page was always moving. I think he did it with the right hand. I'm left-handed, but so I'm doing it this way. Sure. So just watching him spin the page and move the brush in the way his hand worked so well. And in just a few minutes, he had this figure inked beautifully. Half the time it took Matt to pencil it, and the finished work was twice as good. Because he understood the process, understood the tools.
Yeah, not just that, but he also understood his penciler's foundation work.
Yeah.
And could take the foundation and strengthen it naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have today with these computers, these guys who have done nothing but digital inking. It's more of a focus of using the tool of moving in and out on a screen, and they're using the same width, same weight lines and everything, but they're doing it at different focuses. And then when you draw it back to the natural thing, the pages are flat.
Yeah.
They're visually flat. And that means that now the colorist has to come in and try to create depth on line weight, that there's no weight depth perception. And that's a problem for a lot of colorists, because they're over rendering the color, and it takes them longer to do. And I try to explain this to people who do digital inking exclusively. And they're like, but I don't understand what you mean by flat. And I'm like, you really don't see the depth perception here? You know,
Yeah. Here's what I do. When I go, whether it's obviously at a seminar where I have tons of stuff I can show, but even when I do a convention, I come prepared with my show it off packet, because I know what I'm going to run into in most cases. So I bring along examples of excellent inking and poor inking, strong storytelling and weak storytelling on the same page. And I do the same thing with color. One of the things that I'm always looking for is an attractive, brighter color where the skin tone isn't all blotchy. Some people overdo the skin tones. So like, okay, that's not a skin tone, that's a skin disease.
Right.
I like a smooth skin tone, but one that tends to define muscle tone and knees and whatever in color, rather than leaving the hard line, and it gives a very attractive look to the page.
Okay.
And I have multiple colorists who do that, and they get an awful lot of work. And so I keep that in mind. I've also found that, just like with pencilers, like you were talking about, a lot of colorists lock themselves into one overall color style, and they can't adapt to, I can color Joe Bennett just fine. Oh my God, I've been offered an Archie comic. I don't know how to color it. Or I've been offered this is a big one. I've been offered a Disney or DreamWorks children's book. They're offering me $400 a page to color it, but it needs to look like CG animation. I don't know how to do that. Well, that's why they pay $400, because the ones who can do a great job.
The ones that, yeah, exactly. That's why they pay the high dollar, because they want the people that know how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you have that experience and you don't know, first off, you have to be able to assess yourself and know whether or not you can do something. And if you don't know how to do something, be honest with yourself and with the potential client. But then if you don't know, if you want to be able to do that, learn it.
Here's the problem, though. And we were talking earlier in the conversation that it's hard to see outside yourself, though you've got to when you're working on projects with a team. A lot of times, artists, especially the ones starting in the business, are their own worst enemies.
Yeah.
Because they make so many mistakes, aren't willing to listen to anybody. And then you go to them, it's like, okay, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. What are you talking about? I've been practicing for 7 years. Okay, you've been reinforcing those mistakes for 7 years because you didn't listen to anybody else who told you that you're going in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I draw better than you is the answer they give.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you want to try to explain to them why it's wrong, how they can fix it, give them suggestions, and it's wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember my first pro show was as a guest as a convention was Motor City '94 in Detroit. Actually, it was in Novi, his first Novi show, and I had the great fortune or misfortune, depending on how you look at it. I went in the back room, and I got a 3-man panel review of my work. John Byrne, George Perez, Bernie Wrightson.
Oh, damn.
Now, you have to understand, I was a Byrne Perez clone of sorts. Those were 2 of my idols, and I did draw in their wheelhouse. So, of course, they're going to tell you everything that I'm doing wrong, why it's wrong in terms of how they're doing it, but they're also going to sit there and tell you, don't do us, do yourself. And so I had an hour and a half with just those 2 side by side at the same time. And I'm just sitting here just taking notes. Like I had 7 pages of notes from these. Yes, it's gold.
Yeah. And what would have been like to have a camera on that, recording that for posterity.
Yeah. And then they had to go back out to the, to do signings and stuff. And Bernie walked in and John just tapped him on the shoulder. Go teach the kid. Seriously, just go teach the kid. I'm like, okay. I mean, I knew who Bernie was. I knew his work, but I was not. I don't want to say I wasn't a fan because I certainly enjoyed his work. I just wasn't that familiarized with him as I was with the other 2. And it was just like a whole new level of stuff on top of it, Yeah. And it was just like when I walked out of there, I was like, okay, I hadn't graduated from college and I had another 2 months to graduate. But I was finalizing my my official inking portfolio for other companies to show and stuff like that. And I was like, I am armed to the teeth now with how to fix what I do. I can show inking skills, and certain, almost immediately I was ghosting for 4 or 5 inkers at the same time within a month and a half. And it was weird because now you're not just working and interpreting other people's pencils. You have to do it the way the inker that you're supposed to be ghosting for would do it. So it's learning how to study not just the pencil styles, but the inking styles as well. And I was like, okay, this is how you get thrown in the deep end, but swim. And that's how I started when I started drawing officially in the business, really, as far as in the mainstream. Before that, I spent a couple of years doing my own comics. But, when you're doing your own comics, that's your own thing. You're going to learn by just doing. Yeah. And you're going to hopefully learn, but, you're going to make hopefully all your mistakes on that stuff before you go. That's why, I like to say, but.
The other one of the other things is when a lot of comics artists or people coming into the business thinking about being comic artists, they'll pull out at best the Diamond Previews catalog, go down the list and see who to submit to, and they don't realize that there's a whole comics market being done by the book publishers that they don't see because they are they're not distributed into the comic shops.
Mm-hmm. I try to tell everybody Diamond represents about 8% of comics.
All right, play this. Dragon Kingdom. See if I can make that work.
There we go.
Okay, Dragon Kingdom. These are hardcovers from Simon and Schuster. They are 200-page kids graphic novels. Mm-hmm. Puff Detective. I love that design.
Yeah. Okay, that looks like a kind of a classic 40s cover.
Yeah. 40s. And it's
the way it's
yeah. But, we do all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Give you a sense. In 2020, we did over 3,300 pages of artwork, lettering and coloring for Simon and Schuster.
Awesome. And again, like you say, this stuff is not even solicited through Diamond.
Yeah. Okay, here's a line of fractured fairy tales written by Andy Mangels. And
that Pup Detective's design looks amazing, from John Norris says. It does. I mean, it has a classical pulp fiction.
Fractured fairy tales from Abdo Books.
Okay.
And these aren't even in bookstores. These are only sold to school libraries.
Mm-hmm.
And we do many hundreds of pages of this. And same goes for writers. So, we have a deal with Simon and Schuster, so we're doing tons of stuff. But in the past year, I've written something like 1,500 pages of stuff for Simon and Schuster. So there's a market out there. So when these guys are saying, well, you're looking at the mainstream stuff, trust me, I'm looking at stuff that's not considered mainstream because we do so much of it.
Well, the reality is, what is mainstream? Diamond market isn't mainstream.
Yeah.
Diamond market is a niche market.
Well, that's what they're considering mainstream.
Yeah, and I try to teach them, though, that comics is not just this; it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And then they say, "Well, it is." Well, yeah, but you're looking at this over here, and you're forgetting all this over here. It's just like
they're confusing the genre with the medium.
Yeah, exactly. And then you got the people who do print on demand.
Yeah.
You've got people who do digital comics. You've got people that are doing crowdfunding. You've got, you still got your underground market, which is a completely different market still. And that's why I just kind of like look at people when they say, well, you're just this. I'm like, no. But yeah, I love that. Who does the Pup Detective again?
Pup Detective is from Simon and Schuster for their Little Simon line.
Little Simon line. Okay.
Yeah. They have multiple children's lines.
Okay.
And we've got to deal with them to produce tons of stuff for them.
Okay. And that stuff all goes through all the schools, I would imagine. And it also gets marketed to bookstores.
They have a pretty good market, and I'm sure they're going to sell a lot of these because they did these as hardcover and trades, and they know their market well enough to.
Yeah, the hardcovers would go to the schools, and then the trades would go like, I don't know if Simon Schuster does what Scholastic used to do.
Yeah, well, Simon Schuster is the company that's now starting to distribute a lot of the comic book companies' graphic novels.
That's true too.
By the way, I love this. They gave it the dust jacket, but they know it's for kids, and kids wreck books, so they did the library binding inside.
That's smart. That's really smart.
Yeah.
That's great.
But
did you who can
where the camera is here?
Yeah, no, you're fine. Who did the design work on that? I mean, for the dust jacket, did they?
That was actually Nick, who's the art director on the project.
Okay.
So he assigned us the elements, but he came up with the design. That's all him. I cannot take credit for that.
Okay, that's cool. No, I love that he did that, because so many people, like you say, it's something that for kids do, and it's not always going to be kept in the best of shape. But yet, here you go. You got to back up on that. So that's great. Yeah, I love seeing that. But yeah, this is the stuff. You gave a great example again of. Hold on a second, if I can get this thing here. There we go. I want to go back here. Let me see if I can find it. This is Vincenzo's stuff. Go back to the talent. Again, you're not just doing pencilers. I mean, you've got manga artists.
Yep. And
manga is totally different from Western comics.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of people don't understand that either. they don't understand, not just culturally, but in terms of design, because they do things in not necessarily in reverse of how American comics are done, but when we do American translations, we basically just invert and reverse. And then people go, well, that's a bad story layout. That's a bad this. And I said, no, that's because we didn't properly, translate it.
There's a lot of problems with the inverting and relettering, and then you've got all these long word balloons that don't look right for the Western market and all that.
Exactly. But it's not just that. It's like some of the natural things that we do because we look from left to right, since it's inverted. Like you say, the different placements of where we would put word balloons doesn't add up the same way because it's just inverted. And the pacing of the story is broken up a little bit differently.
Yeah, sure.
And they go, and that's why you see these younger, I see younger, a lot of older readers, probably more than the younger readers, because younger readers are desperate for anything. They'll read anything. But a lot of the older readers are like, I can't read manga. Yeah. And I'd like, why not? It's there. It's not that hard. And how many of these people are actually Japanese?
None of them.
Exactly.
I have several that are Chinese, but no Japanese.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that they're sitting here going, well, only those people, these other people are fake. I'm like, oh Lord.
Maybe it just means comics in Japanese. It doesn't refer to anybody specific.
Right, exactly. And this is Meljoy Sanwan.
Yes. And she's an artist that has multiple styles.
You can see it again. Yeah. This is a more digital painterly style. You can see a lot of the paint styling covering over the line art in this case, which is fine. Some people like that and want that look. And then this is a more, even though it is kind of a manga Japanese style, it's also more of a Western traditional style too.
So that's her mix, and she gets a lot of work doing that. That they want the influence, but they want the more westernized detail. And her storytelling sensibility is somewhere between the two.
Right. That makes sense. This is from 2009. Okay.
Yeah, she's got some old stuff up here.
Oh no, it's not about how old it is. I actually want to see older stuff from a lot of artists so I can see the progression of their art style and their work. I don't mind, everybody says, you always say, oh, I only want to see your newest stuff. I want to see most of your newest stuff, but if you have a website that shows me your progression as an artist, that's a good thing. Because that shows me that you are willing to learn, that there's always room for improvement in your work. There's a lot of artists that they get comfortable in a style and they stay where they're at. Nice heavy blacks. And you wonder, I don't know if this is digital ink or not. It looks like it could be, but
she does both.
Yeah. I like the line depth perception on this stuff. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, let me pull up something here.
Let's see, get a little bit more.
Crap.
Yep. Very nice.
Yeah, there was something I wanted to show you if I can find the file.
Okay.
Let's pull this one up. Yeah. Get rid of that. Let me get back to the screen. Let's see if I can share the screen again.
Okay, just a second. Let me stop on this one. Let you share.
All right.
It doesn't like to share both of us at the same time.
Oh, rude. All right. Check this out.
Okay.
This is Meljoy
Okay.
doing a project that David Lawrence and I developed together, Warlords of Oz.
Okay. So this is an Oz book. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I see Tin Man and Dorothy and Scarecrow here. Okay, I get it.
And this is with our Hollywood agent being shopped around right now.
And this is the Jabberwock. That's
this is
dragon.
I think this is Quoth the dragon.
Cracks the dragon. Okay.
All right, let's see. And then I have here's another project she did. This is the same artist since you were talking about Meljoy.
Yeah. Again, this is much more westernized, but it's still, you can see the manga in it, but it's much more westernized.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is what she gets hired to do now.
Very nice.
Let's see. Let me get rid of that. Okay. While you were showing screen, you showed them that website. Go back to where you were on the website.
Okay.
If you can.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
It's gonna. There we go. All right. This is the last page of Mel's.
Yeah.
We'll just go back to talent.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Go to go back to home.
Home. Okay.
Yeah. And because let's see here.
Now, see, here we go. You've worked with Arcana, Boom, DC, Dark Horse, Del Rey, Disney, DreamWorks, HBO, Hasbro, Lego, Marvel, Random House, Reader's Digest. Reader's Digest is comics? Yes, they do. Scholastic, Stanley's POW Entertainment, Zenoscope, Virgin, Upper Deck. And that's just some. That's not all.
Yep. Let's see. I was looking for. I don't know if it's on here. Try services. Let's see if we get.
Okay, advertising and a manga.
Okay, click on animation. Let's see where that takes you. A lot of people may not be aware that we do animation. I hope this works. Does it work? It's not.
I don't know. There's a menu. Home, development, reels, visual effects, gaming.
You should be able to go to the main page of animation.
Did it not do it? Oh, okay. Okay. It opened a new window. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Hold on a second. Let me see if I can. I'll have to
check the new window and.
Yeah. I didn't realize it hadn't opened. I'm sorry.
All right.
Here we go. I think this is the right one. There we go.
Yeah, and that should play. That's a video.
No, it's not playing.
Oh, that's odd. All right. All right.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, this is the different animation styles that we've done.
Okay. Is that Dora?
No. That's done for the Asian market.
Okay.
Not Dora. And this is a commercial we did. Oh, there's the animations video. Yeah, we've done Nico Journey to Magica that's been on Hulu. We've done El Americano that's been on Netflix. The teams have done bits and pieces. Oh, we were supposed to do a Floyd Mayweather movie that didn't happen. There we go.
That's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah. There we go. This was a test to just show what he did. like in CG.
Yeah.
There we go. So we did a CG version of him for a potential video game.
Mm-hmm.
So all this shows you the range of artists that we work with all over the world.
Yeah. And this is storyboarding type.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's there we go. Now you can see the original first one.
Yeah.
It just hadn't quite turned on from my page for some reason. That's all.
So yeah, Glasshouse does a lot more than people realize. And this steampunk type stuff. This was a Nescafe commercial we did for the Asian market.
Oh, the steampunk stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, and that just repeats. But that's right on the main page, and we have all this other stuff that we do.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked on quite a bit of stuff here. You know,
I'm old. Long time.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome.
So, anyway, that gives people a little more of a full idea of what we do.
Yeah. You know, see, I never got into the animation side. I don't know why I didn't. I just never did. I think part of it,
ditches and
beats
digging ditches.
Yeah. Well, you know, I ran a studio from '93 to 2002, and both my parents suffered heart attacks, so I had to step away from the business for a while and be a caregiver for a while, you know, basically. And so maybe if I had stayed, you know, relevant, so to speak, I guess you could say, for lack of a word, I would have gone into that as well eventually. But, you know, when you're out of it for a while and you basically move your talent elsewhere so that they have work while you're taking your own, you know, taking assessment of your own family stuff, it's hard to start over in a way, you know. And so that's why I haven't done it, because people always ask, why haven't you brought back Constellation Studios? And it's because, you know, I'm not by myself. I'm not ready to do all of that again. You know,
this stuff is hard. It takes up a lot of hours.
Yeah, well, like you were saying, you work 16 hours a day, every day, pretty much. You know,
it's been a tough year, but it's been a fulfilling one because I found stuff to keep me busy during the pandemic. I couldn't go out, so take 1,500 pages of writing job. You know.
Yeah, that is it. You know. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you got, how many artists do you represent right now, do you think?
It's over 200.
It's over 200? Yeah.
Yeah, and not all are working all at once. Some of them work only through us. Some have their own clients, and we just fill up their open time. So it varies by artist.
Right. That makes sense, you know. Yeah. And again, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people just don't really understand. You know, you weren't the only one out there, but I mean, I remember in the '90s there was a lot of different houses, you know, and then all of a sudden they disappeared.
Well, you know, there's actually a story behind that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, before me there was Star Reach. You know, Mike Friedrich had his thing, and very briefly he represented Kevin Joer and me for a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't last very long, and soon I was packaging books and whatever. But when I started as an agent was after I found this group of artists in Brazil,
mm-hmm.
used in the Innovation Days. You know, Joe Bennett, who is drawing, you know, Immortal Hulk right now. He was the first artist that I hired for innovation. He did Terry Pratchett's The Color of Magic, or Lightning, one of those. And then Mike Deodato was the second one. Okay. And then it went on to Luke Ross and several others. And those are all, you know, great guys still working today.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got to the point where I had built a roster of close to 60 artists out of Brazil. Everybody was coming through me. Then all of a sudden, a couple of other agencies popped up. Now, they didn't want to do the training and all the stuff that I was doing because I was flying down, doing seminars.
Mm-hmm.
I had a partner down there that had a physical office. People come in and work, and they did training and all that. So they learned the systems. These other agents came in and said, "Oh, well, you can work for us for a smaller percentage." And some said, "No, I get contract. I'm going to stick with these guys." Others, being willing to follow the dollar, went to the other guys and stayed there for a while because it was a promise, at least theoretically, of a few more dollars.
Mm-hmm.
They realized, okay, we all go to the same the same 15 publishers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
With the new guys, they're not getting any feedback on their work. They're not improving any. And then there were questions about the dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wait a minute, why it's not matching up with what we thought we were supposed to be making, stuff like that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and over a period of years, most of those just kind of faded away, and some of them gravitated back to me. Some of them went off on their own. Some of them started their own studio. So it's been a process. There's still another agency out of Brazil that handles a lot of the guys, and I still handle a lot of very loyal people. But I'm the only one that expanded all through the Philippines and Europe and all that. So I've got this enormous.
Well, it's not even just that. I mean, it was like I don't remember who ran DogWorks in the 90s.
That one I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was the guys out of Malibu. One of the Malibu guys started it. That's all I can remember offhand. And they represented a lot of the already established talent. I think they had Ryan Augustine, and Mark Wade, and some of those guys. But it's been a while since I just I saw a lot of that stuff happening in the 90s. Was just these little agencies that we officially represent these guys, and it's like, okay.
You know what? There is really nothing wrong with that.
No, there isn't.
Established people, because I found once you get to a certain level, yes, you can do all this other stuff with the contracts and follow up on money and the social media and this and that and the other. But every one of those things you do takes away from the drawing time. So the agents end up being worth their 10% because they're bringing more value to it in terms of time that you can actually draw and make more than what you're paying them.
Yeah, and a lot of artists don't understand that, when a client comes to us and they're saying, well, I'm looking for artist X. And first off, you know what their schedule is. And you know what your artist likes or doesn't like to do. And you don't even have to necessarily tell your artist, that no, this isn't he's not the right artist for you, or something like that. You can do that. And you can also direct other clients that are not looking for a specific artist that needs the work that does fit the mold better.
Sure. We do a lot of that.
Yeah. And they don't understand that when we're representing, we're trying to get you enough work that there's always food on your table, but we're also trying to make it look like when I did it, I didn't always take a cut. I always just said, if I think this person's appropriate, and I know if they haven't got that much pay, because a lot of these would be smaller companies that didn't have the budgets, I would forgo my fee. I would just put them directly in touch with the artist if I knew they had it in their schedule. And I'd say, okay, I'll look over your contract, make sure if they don't follow through, get back in touch with me and we'll rep you, that way. But otherwise, we're good, And years later, these guys are like, well, he didn't really rep me. I'm like, excuse me? I didn't rep you? Remember this assignment and this assignment and this assignment and this assignment? Yeah, you wouldn't have gotten all that if I hadn't done that for you. And they're like, oh, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah, some artists remain,
I,
helpful
I
and
think what it is, though, I don't know if you've had this problem where some editors just talk shit about you.
probably
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
happens to everybody.
yeah. And I think what it is just some of the editors, told, I know for a fact there's been at least 7 of my guys that were told, don't associate, don't acknowledge that you did anything with them, or we'll blacklist you.
Now, I've never heard that.
Yeah, I've had that happen, and it's like, guys, go make your living. I don't care. It's fine. But if someone asks you if I worked with you, don't be an idiot. Just say, yeah, I worked with him for a while.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt. It's nobody's going to sit there and go, oh, gee, he admitted he did what? I helped him get in at, Slave Labor Graphics, or I helped him get in at Caliber, 20 years ago. No one's going to freaking care,
Honestly, I don't think I've ever had that problem.
Yeah.
The most I've experienced was a couple of artists that I worked with that when I read an interview that they did, now these were guys that I brought in. They had never worked in the business, trained them for 7 years and got them into Marvel and DC. And I read an interview. It's like, oh yeah, I showed my work to some guy from the US. And right there.
Yeah. That
Changed my name to some guy.
Yeah. So now you're gonna have to say, on your shirt at the show, David Campiti, some guy.
Well, I'll change my shirt for next time.
Yeah. Then they'll know who you're talking about. Yeah. That's the funny part, though. I mean, I see this and know, well, the guy who gave me my break was some Marvel editor or some Image guy editor like Stevenson or Sobalski or something like that. And I'm like, they may have given you your break into the larger mainstream, but you spent all these years developing and working in this business before that.
Yeah.
We talk about that technical professional skill. You have to have the skill of recognizing it and acknowledging those who helped you, because it takes a village to make everyone.
Well, there are so many stories you can tell about various sides of stuff. I had one. There was a young guy back when it was a lot easier to get artists hired for at the big guys. Pretty good artist. Very clean style that I knew I could sell. The first job I got him, an X-Men annual.
Okay.
That's not bad for a first assignment.
No. For primary story or a backup?
No, this was a whole annual.
Okay.
Yeah. And he finished that. And then the editor liked it enough that he called the guy and said, you did a terrific job on this. I want to give you a miniseries. He said, oh, great. I'll start it right now. So he starts it, and he tries to be coy about it. He doesn't tell me because he's trying to avoid paying the 10% Glass House commission. And I find out, and he said, no, I'm good. He called me directly. It's like, yeah, but you're still under Glass House. And I didn't mind that much. We hadn't signed a contract with him. He was just starting out. And it's like, okay, good luck. You don't need me then. And I let him do his own thing. He got into a big fight with the editor. First over page rates, and then over deadlines, and then over corrections. And I got this frustrated call from the editor saying, can you do something about this guy? I said, well, he told me he's working directly with you and didn't want me representing him. So good luck.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, that miniseries was the last job he ever did.
That makes sense.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I hate to see that happen, though.
Right.
I was saying earlier, sometimes artists are their own worst enemies. They don't realize the problems that they generate for various reasons.
Well, I think that's true of everybody, not just artists. I mean, sometimes we just
but that's our subject.
Yes, yeah. No, it's creators, not just artists.
Yeah.
I mean, writers do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's so many writers.
Let's use artists in the bigger, more general.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, I try to think about, like I said, you were talking about how Chaos wasn't paying, and you lost quite a sum there. I had a couple of colors that he hadn't paid. The guy was from Canada, and Top Cow had finished using him, and he didn't have any place to go, so he came to live with me for a little bit, and we were trying to get him his money so he could get back home to Canada, basically, at the time. And I had an associate that had some business dealings with Chaos that had to be, they weren't finalized, but it was a big money contract. And I said, well, we're going to have lunch with my friend and see what's going on here. Mm-hmm. And he explained this. I had my colorist explain the situation to the guy, and he goes, oh, really? Well, we can fix that. And right there at the lunch table, he pulls out the phone, calls up head of Chaos. I'm not going to, you know who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And, he's like, you have one of two choices. Either this guy gets his money or you don't have a contract. And the colorist looked at me like, you're kidding, right? No, he's not. You're going to get paid, I promise. And sure enough, he got paid, but it was like, none of us should have to do something like that.
Very true. Very true.
But that's the sort of thing that does happen from time to time. And it wasn't, and when it came to him, I said, okay, he's not the only one I know who works with him. So I told him, we need to do some, not my colorist, but my friend that was doing the contract with him. I said, you need to do some homework and see who else is not, if there's any other outliers here, and there were. I didn't know that you weren't getting paid because I would have made sure you did.
We were like the main supplier for this stuff because he was doing 10 books and we were doing 8 of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll tell you who I mean, because you probably know who I mean if I tell you off camera. Yeah. But, and then that same colorist worked for Rob, and he had to go to the ex-editor because the ex-editor paid Rob for his color work. And it was supposed to go from Rob to him, and it didn't. Mm. And we had to contact the ex-editor and say, hey, this is not working right. So stuff like that happens, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But I think that's a whole different discussion than what we started out today.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah. But getting back to that, production is another thing. Like you said, production, they don't understand production. A colorist has to know what looks good on a screen isn't necessarily going to be what's on the page.
Talking about the artist's own worst enemy, the colorists that turn in a print file as RGB. Find me a printer that prints out of red, green, and blue. Find me one.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Well, it's not even just that. I mean, it's like, okay, a color should ask what your publisher or whoever you're sending your artwork to, your art director, whatever, what are the specs that you want for the resolution and specs for your computer screen? Mm-hmm. Because what looks good on my screen in one resolution is not going to look the same in yours if it's a different resolution. And then the printer might have a different resolution. You need to know what the printers are so that everybody's copacetic on the same page. Otherwise, you can risk the chance of layers not lining up. You can run the chance of a redshift, shifting your colors darker. Mm-hmm. all these different technical aspects, and colorists are like, why do I need to know that? It's like, that's not my job. That's the art director's job, or that's the production manager's job at the publisher. And it's like, no, you have to understand, these people work through hundreds of books a month at Marvel and DC, at Dynamite, at Dark Horse. They need you to make their job run as smoothly as possible.
And if you can't, someone else will.
Exactly.
Is the way it really goes.
Exactly. So you need to understand these technical aspects of the job. And it's the same thing with lettering. It's the same thing with the inking, digital inking. Have you ever seen someone do digital inks in layers?
Yes.
Okay.
We are often, we've gotten books that we've penciled, and when it came time to ink, it's like, oh, we need all that in layers, and oh, by the way, finish all the backgrounds and all the figures behind because we've decided we want to animate. And so we've had everything so they can do their limited animation movement stuff. So yeah, we've done a lot in layers, and we deliver a lot of books in layers.
Okay.
For that.
All right. So you are familiar with that. A lot of, but when I first saw that and the guy was inking in layers, I was like, okay, do you know what you're doing with that? And do you understand why you're doing it that way? And because it was something new to me, but it was something that the client was asking for.
Yeah, we've been doing that for years. We did our first job like that 12, 14 years ago for Sony, and been doing it for clients ever since.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is like, when I say it was new to me at the time, this was probably around 2010, so about 10 years ago. So, but 10, 11 years ago. But, that's what I say. We're always learning something new.
Sure.
Yeah, and, it's the same.
You're talking to a guy who did production in Quark Express decades ago.
Yeah. I'm the guy who did the paste ups.
I did too. Remember, innovation, that was all,
traditional paste up work, yeah.
Yep. And before that, when I was packaging books in the mid-'80s, and we had one of the first Macs, and it was dot matrix printers were all that you could get. And we were printing out dot matrix stuff at 11 by 17 size, hand pasting it up, with the waxer and all that. 11 by 17 size. So a dot matrix reduced down the comic book print size, looked clean. It didn't look like dot matrix anymore.
Right.
So yeah, I remember that from 1985. And if David Lawrence is listening, he was part of that.
I don't know if David's still with us or not. But yeah, I mean, that was what I did at Caliber. A lot of the letter calls, paste ups, and advertising paste ups and stuff like that. And that thing brings us back to editors as well. I mean, talent scouts. I started out as a slush reader, so to speak, for Dave or for Gary Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Call me the first line of defense, the first gatekeeper, whatever. If you couldn't get past me, you didn't get seen by Kevin Van Nook or the Pruitts or Gary. But it was that sort of thing that you had to learn. We have to learn how to read what we're looking at.
You said Kevin Van Hook. You can't do better than Kevin Van Hook. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is.
I love it. Yeah. Something that people breaking in though have to realize, and you made it a point saying your first line of defense. It's one of the difficulties in this business is the fact that you are submitting to the submissions editor, who's a low man on the totem pole. So
exactly.
And that's difficult. When I was running innovation, I wanted to see all the stuff, but I got too damn busy. So so I ended up assigning it to somebody who we ended up firing because we found he wasn't doing the job correctly, and a lot of submissions were being thrown into a big box in the back room.
No.
And so fired him, and then we shut down production for a week because I said every one of those submissions deserves a response. All got them, went through, each person got an apology and an individual response, and any of the good ones made it to my desk and I dealt with them personally. So because I had to do it right.
That's it. I mean, I always tried to look at it as my job was to find the stuff that I thought Kevin or Joe and Jim Pruitt or Gary or whoever else was in there would want to look at, and if it wasn't at that level, or there's somebody who didn't know how to follow directions and send all pinups or whatever, I would send them a nice letter, and say, okay, part of the reason that you are not being, accepted at this time is, and I would write the reasons down, and I try to give them advice of what to do, and a lot of submissions don't. So a lot of submission editors, they just give you a form letter. You're not suitable at this time, and try again whenever, type thing. And that's not, I guess I looked at it partly because when I was at Central Michigan, I took the attitude of I had to learn art analysis and criticism, art history, literary analysis and criticism, all these things to be that part of the side of the business. And I went and got my teaching certification, and I was going to the high schools and junior high and looking in art classes and teaching. And I felt that needed to be applied to being a submissions editor or assistant or that sort of thing.
That makes sense.
And, and on top of that, when I wasn't doing it with the Caliber stuff, I was back at Central Michigan, basically overseeing all these other kids. There was like 27 members, 40 books between the 27 members.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm basically overseeing that, going to school full time, and on the weekends driving down to help out on Caliber. That was what I was doing in 93, 94.
Yeah. The whole submissions thing is something that as new artists come in and they have a chance to show portfolios, more of them, I think, need, because of that kind of structure, it's the low person on the totem pole looking, need to take with them managed expectations about what they can get. Portfolio review. Probably
but they also need to respect the person who's giving them the review. Just because they're on the low man totem pole does not mean that they don't know what they're talking about. And a lot of editors, or a lot of newcomers, because you're the low man on the totem pole, well, they don't know.
But it's like, you got to be good to everybody on your way up, because you're going to meet them on your way down.
David, do you have anyone who pre-screens your 300 or so submissions you see every week? Are you even able to review that kind of volume?
Here's what happens. I have managers in various countries. We have offices in Brazil, Italy, the Philippines, India, Indonesia, and obviously here. And a lot of them get sent here, and it's gotten to the point where I used to send detailed responses to everybody that crossed my desk. I can't do that anymore.
Right.
And I've started doing what I dreaded having to do. Thanks for submitting, but what you've sent me isn't at a professional level I can sell to our clients. Okay, it's gone. It's true. It's accurate. It's out of here. I've also got 5 or 6 paragraphs that I have of stuff I've had to repeat 1,000 times
Mm-hmm.
that I can copy and paste and add a line or two and send a response.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and maybe say in conjunction with this specific element of your work, this is what this applies.
Right? Yeah. And so a lot of the stuff that's sent to the other managers, they screen and they only send me the best stuff.
Right.
And they ought to know, because they're not low man on the totem pole. They're running their office of 40 or 50 artists.
Right.
So that's quite a difference.
So you're getting, when it's a difference when you get the stuff from your managers. That's the cream that you can really review.
And God, a lot of the stuff they're sending still isn't at a level that we can do it. I've been getting a lot of stuff that's at a, let's call it a just shy of dynamite level.
Okay.
You look at a dynamite book and it's okay. It's all decent stuff, but there's a general look to their books. Yes. I get a lot of stuff that's one level below that. And it's like, all right, but the guys at Dynamite are working for really low rates. I can't get you a job that's going to pay what you're going to need to make a living.
Right.
And I've gotten, 84 other submissions that are on your level this week. What makes you stand out in a crowd? And that's when I'll go into a talk about, all right, if you were the editor doing the hiring, what do you think makes you stand out from these other guys? And sometimes, without names, of course, I'll send examples of the other guys that are on their level and saying, I'm getting this. Now, everybody I'm getting in this row is better than this. Yes, I have my middle range and top range guys that are already being offered jobs.
Right.
Realistically speaking, do you think you're going to get any jobs here? So I'm sorry, I'm not willing to take you on, because if I did, it would be giving you false hope, because I don't think I can get you any work. So there's more and more and more of that, because I see so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also the problem, and this is something some folks don't realize. You almost never get a diamond showing up fully developed, polished, ready to go. If you get a diamond, that diamond's been black marketed, I swear, because there's always a problem. There's a reason that this superstar level guy doesn't have work. Who has he burned in the past? How big of a problem is he? And I've never, ever seen that happen, where a guy who's, as I said in the post, who's 100% ready for prime time is going to be 100% professional the way you hope he will be, because there's always something that's held him back. I've run into that way too many times. So unless it's a guy that submits to you and it's, you recognize his name. I've been working for Marvel and DC for 20 years. I'm tired of chasing after the jobs. Is there anything you can bring me from another company that's different? I want a taste of something different. His stuff, he's delivering a monthly book or whatever, that's fine. But if it's some stranger you never heard of and he's magnificent, there's usually a reason why he hasn't gotten the jobs.
Yeah.
And you find
I got a crazy question. How often do you receive fakers? Fakers, the artists that try to pretend they're somebody else. They take someone else's artwork and claim it as their own. You ever had that problem?
A little bit. It's more very obvious swipes.
Yeah.
Than somebody else taking somebody else whole cloth and doing it. My examples are a little weirder.
No, go ahead.
I was in the Philippines once, and there was an artist, very good but quirky artist, that for various reasons was difficult to work with. Didn't work with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm teaching one of my seminars, and this at the end of the seminar, where I'm reviewing portfolios, and there's this girl standing outside in the hallway, and one of my people go over and say, "Can we help you?" She said, "Yeah, I wasn't here for the seminar, but I'd like to show my portfolio." And she brings it in, and I look at it, and although the pieces are new, I immediately recognize this guy's stuff, even though his name isn't on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going through it. Yeah, this is nice. I like this. This is yours, huh? Oh, yes, yeah, of course. Oh, when did you draw this? And I'd get some vague answer. Oh, what about this? I'd get some vague answer. And it's like, yeah. So you know. And I said the artist's name. I said, who? Oh, well, this looks very, very, very much like his work.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I don't know who that is. It's like, okay, well, I love the work. I'd be interested in seeing how easy you are to work with. And I handed it back, and I said, and I said the guy's name, tell him I said hello. And she left, and one of the artists came over. That's his girlfriend. I saw him yesterday at the mall.
Yeah.
Why did he even send her in? What was the point?
Right.
I never quite got that.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've seen that sort of thing. Yeah.
Portfolio reviews, at least in person, are much more bizarre than getting them by email.
Yeah.
The guy who comes up at the convention throws open his work and says, "I kick ass," and it's one step above stick figure theater. This happened at Motor City.
I'm the next Matt Fiesel, damn it.
There we go. I started telling him what he really needed to do. He said, "You're not what I need," and he slammed the portfolio shut and walked away. I figured, at this point, I'm probably exactly what he needs.
Yeah.
He's never shown up in the business doing anything, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy. I can, it's, getting back to the theme of professional skills. Like I said before, your pencilers are your foundation. Your inkers shore up the final production, and your colorists are like a house painter. They paint, the house and the interiors of the house to look nice. Just as an analogy, as I'm going here, but when you have pencilers who get mad when an inker corrects them, and it's like, there's a reason why that was corrected, whether that was an editor's asking for it or because it needed to be done, and the inker knew it had to be done. Examples: if you're drawing Batman and the bat symbol is 4 different sizes on the same page on the chest, the inker's job is to make that uniform.
That is a complaint I've not had much of, at least not the past couple of decades. Now, some of that may be because there aren't a lot of guys that are just inkers over pencilers. Most artists these days are doing the whole thing.
Yeah, that could be. But I'm just saying, though, I mean, I can remember that, a lot in the 90s and early 2000s. They throw a fit over it. I'm like, do you understand your role? You are the preliminary illustrator. It's this whole thing of the penciler's a superstar and everybody's subservient to the penciler type attitude.
I guess I was fortunate because I didn't deal with a whole lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had maybe a half dozen guys that took on the attitudes in the 90s, and they didn't stick around too long.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of these are younger guys that just didn't know.
Yeah.
And again, they're not around anymore, unfortunately. In terms of, yes, they could have probably been something if they had just listened.
There's a point. There's 2 ways to get into this business. One is to be really good. The other is to be really decent imitator of somebody who's great. Like a lot of people got in as Jim Lee imitators.
Mm-hmm.
But here's something most folks don't realize: the guys who are the superstars, who came in, became the superstar. Jim Lee and Neil Adams and whatever. All the guys that came in to copy them
have been superstars.
Yeah, they either vanished or they developed into something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Sienkiewicz started in as a Neil Adams imitator, Moon Knight, and so forth. But he became something totally different and amazing on his own. So he became a superstar in his own right, and that was his thing. But all the dozens and dozens of Jim Lee and Liefeld imitators that couldn't do anything else just kind of mostly faded away.
Well, either they're faded away or they're technically sound, but they're just there. They're used when they're affordable.
But you don't see a whole lot of those guys, and they don't really make any kind of big waves in the business.
Mm-mm.
So,
and the thing is, like all these Marvel and DC artists, because you'll hear a lot of them that the styles are homogenized. It's the same wheelhouse of style.
Yeah.
And I say, yeah, okay, if Jim Lee is no longer the chief creative officer, for some reason, DC pays him off and says, you're just going to do illustrative work now. And you get a different art director. Yes, there's going to be a changeover, a huge changeover in who gets work at DC. If Joe Quesada leaves Marvel and they get a different artist in charge of art direction, it's going to be a completely different thing. And they go, well, why is it? Okay, well, that's at that level. Why is it the same thing like at Dynamite? Dynamite has this very uniform type look. They have a certain style of artists that they like. And it sort of flows in that same direction.
Well, some
do and some don't.
Yeah. In the case of some of the companies, and Dynamite might be an example of this, they go with a certain kind of realistic style because those are the guys that are available for that page rate.
Exactly, for that page rate.
Yeah. And and some of the guys are quite solid.
Yes,
the difficulty for those, and one editor at Marvel referred to it as the Dynamite curse. They said the problem is these guys get used to the habit of doing a certain level of work for a certain level of money, and they do that every month in and out for several years, enforcing that same consistent level of quality for the money. And then they get frustrated that Marvel and DC haven't snatched them up when they've been proving themselves month after month for years on a steady book. And some have come to me and said, well, I'll join Glasshouse if you can get me into Marvel or DC. It's like, okay, when do you start planning on giving me Marvel or DC level work to show Marvel or DC? And that makes them angry. It's like, all right, now I have to go through the whole process of, okay, now look at the best stuff that Marvel or DC is doing. Here's this, here's that. And it's like, yeah, but here's this book that DC is doing, or this book Marvel's doing, and I'm better than that. Oh, congratulations. You don't suck as bad as their worst artist. But you know what? Everybody they have is better than their worst artist. They're looking for somebody as good or better than their best guy.
Yeah.
So it's hard to break them out of that mental rut, let's say.
Sure.
And it's a shame because there's some awfully good guys there that.
That's why I try to tell people it's not that your work isn't at a solid, technically sound level. It's that you can take it up a notch or two.
Yeah.
You have the ability, and you try to cheerlead them on.
Yeah.
You try, but it sometimes just falls upon deaf ears.
Yeah. Well, one of my saddest things about opening an office in the Philippines which has been over 20 years now. I got to meet some of the classic Filipino artists that my wife was from the Philippines, that she grew up on reading native Filipino comic books.
Right.
And they were names that I had recognized from over the years who had never quite broken into the American market. Like, so they weren't at Alfredo Alcala or Rudy Nebrace or a Nestor Redondo type level. And I would look at their work and you could see potential there, but the work always looked so rushed. So it's like they were tired. And I'd have these conversations with them and realize, oh, they were being paid $5 a page. They were being paid, the top guy was being paid $8 a page, do work for the native market. So to earn a good living, they had to crank out 4, 5, 6, 8 pages in a day.
Yeah.
And then when they would hear, I talked to one of them who I knew had great potential. And I told him, here's the level of work I need. And I'd show them. He said, well, that's going to take a full day to do that. And I said, it's going to pay you $300 a page to do that level. Well, I can't afford that. He wasn't hearing dollars. He was hearing 300 pesos because that's how he was used to being paid. 50 pesos is $1.
Right.
So he was hearing 300 pesos. And he was saying $6 a page. That's what I'm making now. I can't. No, you're going to make $300 a page. And I put
you have to $300 US. Yes.
I show him on the calculator. And he couldn't make the mental adjustment that it's humanly possible to get paid that much per page. I said, well, that's a standard professional Marvel and DC rate for pencils and inks and or whatever. And he just couldn't break out of the habit of just churning out the pages. Occasionally, you'd see glimmers of just wonderfulness.
Yeah, brilliance, right? Yeah,
that the hair in that panel, that face. Okay, the angle in that shot. Can you put these all into one?
Yeah,
it's just, and I just couldn't get him to break through, and that happened.
And some of these guys, you know, they need to learn. Like, okay, Nestor Redondo and Nebrez and Ernie Chua or Ernie Chan, they were great inkers over John Buscema.
Yeah.
I wish that these guys would have the guy that has the understructure for the pencils and is willing to take that and let the inker finish them.
Yeah.
Because they're all trying to grow roses is the phrase. You know, I don't know if it was McFarlane's the one who's been credited for coining it, but you know, I don't know if he's really the one who started that phrase. But yeah, it's like you can see if you had this base stuff done underneath, you could go ahead and layer stuff over it. It's going to look gorgeous.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that was one of the joys of seeing, you know, Alcala's work over John Buscema on those black and whites. It's like, okay, you've turned that into a whole different art form.
Right.
But you know, once you got beyond Nestor Redondo, who could do anything, he had a solid storytelling sense.
Right.
But
well, as an inker, you still have to have solid storytelling. I mean,
yeah, but it's like it was the difference between giving Rudy Nebrace pencils and inks or giving Rudy Nebrace Gil Kane or somebody like that to do the breakdowns, and then he put all this marvelous line over top it. And some of the results were still so good. I remember John Carter, Warlord of Mars #2. I think it was Rudy Nebrace over Gil Kane. It was just marvelous.
Yeah. I wish that more editors would pursue something like that rather than having these pencilers spend forever over rendering a page for so-called perfection, you know. And then, well, yeah, this is so tight we can digitally
Oh,
You
I've
know,
been down that road. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, no, no, no. It's tight, but look at it, examine it. There's flaws. You need an inker who can read this and make the corrections that need to be made before you do this. And then you got to have a colorist, if you're going to do it over pencils, if you insist, that knows how to do it correctly. I mean, do you remember when Marvel Max did? Oh, geez, it was a Werewolf by Night book back in 08 or 09. And they screwed it up so badly that the guy's pencils bled through the colors. You could see the grains of the pencil shading
Oh,
in
wow.
the book.
Wow.
And I was just crying because the artist is fucking amazing. But you just, it looked like shit because of this technical foul pow. And I was just like, wow, why did they do this way? Who's the inker? There's no inker.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are times when it comes down to we were talking about early in my posts,
Mhm.
editors who haven't learned everything. So yes, they'll make mistakes,
Sure.
and editors kind of blunder through some stuff. I got a story nobody believes.
Or even it could have been simply a thing of they actually did have it right, but the files weren't sent in right to the printer, and that's why it ended up that way. I don't know what happened.
It could have been any of a number of things.
Exactly.
Here's one. You've seen the style, Mike Deodato's evolution of style across the decades.
Okay.
Deodato started with me at Innovation, and it was a very photo reference, realistic style. Then when he started doing superheroes, it was very, when he first started, it was very Neil Adamsy, and then he started adding a lot of imagey type of things to it, the elongated figures and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then when he got to the end of the 90s, after he did some work again for DC and Chaos and whatever, I flew down there and we had a conversation about how to upgrade his style again. And so he went back to the more reference stuff, but instead of building panels around photo reference, he'd do the big dramatic action and shoot reference that matched the storytelling. So suddenly he had this better drawn stuff that was very dramatic. And he learned to shoot photos where he'd shoot, if somebody's reaching like this, he'd learn to take this part of the shot, blow it up so it was correctly foreshortened like this.
Sure. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So he learned how to do this right. And then after he had mastered that, I took him back to Marvel. Say, hey, Deodato's got a new style. Here it is. The editor said, wow, okay, I want to use him on an X-Men story. But I want the absolute tightest work Deodato has ever done in his life. Okay. So Deodato did this amazing job, super tight. You could shoot from the pencils. Every line perfect. He sweated over this thing. We turned it in. Weeks pass. The editor's assistant calls. We can't accept this. It's too tight. There's too much graphite on it. We want to give it to an image type inker, and they're all turning it down. There's too much graphite. Because they said they wanted it super tight, so he delivered. The editor made Deodato go back, redraw the story.
Instead of finding an inker that's more appropriate for the pencils that you got delivered, you go and make him redraw the pencils.
So, but they didn't return the very detailed originals. So it's fortunate Deodato kept photocopies. So he ended up light boxing, outlining, and then leaving out all the rendering that he did and sent that in. 3 weeks later, that editor lost his job for whatever reason. And then I get this phone call one day from the new editor saying, why are there two versions of this story? Did Diodato do this one and then decide to resubmit these super tight pencils? Said it was the other way. He did this one, then he did this one, and so that it could be inked. It's like, but the super tight pencils are gorgeous. Why didn't we print from that? I said, I don't know. Why don't you ask? I said the editor's name. Well, he was fired. I said, was that the reason? And they said, but there's two versions of this here. I said, yeah, and you know what? He hasn't been paid for either one.
Mm-hmm.
So she told Joe Quesada, and to his credit, Joe Quesada paid Diodato twice.
Well,
and they printed the version shot from the pencils. Mm-hmm. And for the next 5 years, that was Diodato's shtick, doing these super tight pencils on things.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, but the thing is, okay, there's I don't know what they mean by too much graphite. I didn't understand what they meant by that.
It was pencils very dark and tight and burnished down so they wouldn't smear, and which made them pretty impossible to ink because he did not intend for them to be inked. They told him they wanted super tight pencils.
Okay.
So he literally gave them what they asked for.
Okay. I mean, I would love to see what that looks like in a way to see the pencils, because I mean, that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, when you say you switch graph, I mean, was he doing a lot of side shading with the side of the pencils?
No.
No.
Let's see here. As you're talking, I'm going to look it up. The heck of it.
You mentioned John Carter over Gil Kane. What issue is that you were talking about? Do you remember?
If I'm remembering correctly, it was the second issue.
Okay.
Of John Carter, Warlord of Mars, because the first one was Gil Kane, inked by Dave Cockrum, and that looked terrific.
Right.
Then Rudy Nebres did the second one, and that looked terrific too.
Okay. Well, I haven't found that cover, but I have found Gil inked by Rudy. More like the interior pages.
Ah.
Oh, okay. This is the first page of that issue, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I can share that. Unfortunately, it does have a digital stamp over it, but we can still see the majority.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that was lovely stuff, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the brushwork that he's doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the crow-quill stuff too. It's not. I mean, a lot of it looks like brush. And the cross hatching that he's doing for shading.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff here that you can tell it's crow-quill too, so.
These top classic Filipino guys were just amazing with their sense of rendering.
Mm-hmm.
And, but they, as you say, they were all about decorative. Less so about storytelling. So combinations like this, to me, worked very well.
Yes.
I remember there was some, Rudy also did finishes over Jim Starlin layouts on some issues of Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up being pretty fantastic too.
Yeah.
Because they having all the construction there and the storytelling made a lot of difference.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I loved that stuff growing up.
Oh yeah. But if you show this stuff to a kid today, or even 20-somethings today, they'll go, "This is so old-fashioned." It's like, no.
See, I don't get the old-fashioned because
I don't either.
Because there's nothing in the style that's old. It's not like the golden age stuff that was just the earliest of it was very rudimentary. Not to mention clothes, that everybody wearing fedoras and whatnot. But
well, a lot of them didn't do what's the word I'm looking for? Folds in the clothing. It wasn't there on a lot of them. Like men's suits and stuff. It wasn't there. It was just flat. And this has all this nice textual rendering, and it's just I don't know. But like I say, it was before my time, so it's old fashioned. That's basically what it means when they say something like that.
When I got the guy saying Wally Wood, a dead guy, so he doesn't count. It's like,
oh God, yeah, I remember that. Oh my God, no,
really?
Well, who do you think is a great anchor now? Oh, Scott Williams is awesome. Like, yeah, you know who Scott learned from? Here's who he learned from. And I start naming the people that Scott cites as his mentors. Who's at the top of the list? Wally freaking Wood. Who's up at the next list? Terry Austin. But Terry doesn't draw stuff anymore like that anymore. Yeah, Terry's like, what? Jeez, he's got to be in his late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
You're not going to be drawing the same level of skill at 70 that you do at 25. Necessarily, your vision changes, your hand changes. You can get carpal tunnel after doing this all these years. There's all kinds of things that play into this, and they have to change what they do. And the other thing is, a lot of artists aren't necessarily compatible with one another, and that's another editor. Editors need to understand how to build that compatibility between creators. There we go. You wanted to share something?
Yeah.
What's it doing? Ah, yes.
Nestor Redondo.
Ah, yes. Very beautiful stuff.
My God. Yes.
And all that, and so much of that is actually brush. It's not Crowquill.
Yeah, the stuff is just brilliant. And he had a sense of storytelling. It wasn't super dramatic, but it was clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing is, there's a lot of artists today that, if they looked at that stuff and figured out the elements that they like about that stuff and added it into theirs, it would raise their game so much. Yeah. And that's all we're asking for is take a chance. Take the time to learn about what else is out there.
And so many of these folks, for any of the young people breaking in that are watching this, like, Rudy Nevers, who's that? Nestor Redondo? What? Alfredo who?
Yeah, exactly.
Sauce. Yeah. So
right. Well, it's not even just that generation. Yes, we're going old school, so to speak. Wally Wood, old school, but it's even modern guys that they don't know.
But I look at so many. Look at the related field, movie making. Mm-hmm. You've got so many young movie makers that'll come in now, and they'll still talk about what they learned studying Hitchcock or studying Orson Welles or whatever. It's like, okay, so they're learning from those guys, so they're paying attention to what's come before them, and then adapting and updating and making it their own. But for some reason, the comics artists too many of them don't seem to be willing to do the same thing. So you end up with them at this rudimentary level that they really shouldn't be at.
Now, do we believe that is partly because the editors haven't had the same mentorship as they did back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, Archie Goodwin taught a lot of editors. Mark Grunwald did a good job teaching editors. Denny O'Neil did some good job teaching editors.
I suspect that's some of it based on my experience with a lot of the younger editors coming in. But a lot of this is stuff that before work ever gets to those editors, these artists should have learned. It's not really, by the time you get to the top companies, yes, those editors by all means ought to have magnificent editorial skills. Yet by the time an artist is, as I said, ready for prime time, ready for the top companies, the top books, the top page rates, they should have already learned this stuff. Marvel and DC are not the training ground. Or not when you've got all these dozens of other companies there, or the chance to independently publish your own book through Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever it is. There's so many opportunities to learn and so many missed opportunities.
Philip Burnett says, to be fair, that level of rendering, he's referring to the Nabries and Redondo and those, doesn't often mesh well with digital colors either. I don't agree with that.
Only if you have crappy digital colorists.
Yeah, who don't understand what they're inking, or coloring rather. Yeah, I think that's, again, there's too many colorists want to over-render it and create false senses of light and shadow in a work against what is given to them in the inks.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
And so when you have someone who does that kind of rendering, you can go much, I don't want to say more basic look on coloring, but
there's a way to do it that it doesn't look basic, but it doesn't look over-rendered.
Exactly. It's a balance.
Yeah. We were talking earlier that a color technique that I like is it's a smooth color, but there's a rendering of the muscle tone and so forth in the legs and arms and so forth. And it looks really good over simpler art styles. And so this stuff that, the classic Kirby and Sinnott and all that, it would work with that. And I have plenty of digital colorists on my roster right now that can take any of this stuff from the 60s, 70s, and so forth and make it look right because they don't overcolor it. They know what they're working with and they know what the best level is to get it to that.
And again, when they did the work back in the 60s and 70s and everything was done with I can't even think of what it's called. Not lithography, but with all the different.
Oh, they were cutting layers of ruby lith on.
Ruby lith. That's what I was trying to think of. That was the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everything was flat color, so to speak, with a little bit of rendering in the colors. Sometimes, if they had the good enough paper for it, that would receive it. You can still go old school, traditional, and color by hand, on a smaller, like a color guide, kind of like what I have over here on the wall that you can see in the corner there. I have some color guides over John Byrne by Matt Webb.
Yeah.
You can take that, if it's done well, and blow it up in Photoshop and translate it over to digital and get the effect you want. And you can do that with traditional methods, with color pencils, with Copics, and get the tones that you want without having to lose your rendering. And so I've always told people this is why I was saying, if you don't understand the traditional, it doesn't matter how great you are technically on a computer, because that's the stuff that you need to know to do that kind of thing, to understand what you're looking for to try to achieve in the digital world as well. And that's where a lot of these people fail when they want to try and color something like this, is they're used to seeing what has been done with a different style of art.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder when I get artwork or color or whatever submissions from folks, sometimes I don't understand what their source material was, how they learned. I've had a number of people that have submitted colors to me that are much too saturated, or they've made, frankly, some boneheaded choices and so forth. And I will say, the easiest way to explain this is look at page 17 of the DC Comics Guide to Coloring and Lettering. I think Mark Chiarello may have done that. Years ago, I bought 40 copies of that book and sent that to all of our colorers and say,
that was Chiarello and Todd Klein.
Yeah, and that was, I said, this right now is the basic Bible. Learn everything that's in this. Use that as your starting point.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to go wrong when you've got somebody who really knows what he's doing, actually writing the book.
And then kids, it's Mark Chiarello. That's your art director that worked at DC for 26 freaking years. That's the guy, man. That's the guy that you're trying to impress. So here he is telling you how to impress him. He's giving you the inside scoop on how to get to that level.
Yeah.
And then you get someone, like the new guy. They had to find someone who was a digital illustrator, so they hired Freddie Williams to do the digital guide for DC's guide. And Freddie was one of the guys that was a satellite member of my studio back in the day. And I can tell you right now, as brilliant as that stuff as he does today, when he was working traditional, he was even better. The editors, when he first started coming into Marvel and DC, told him to simplify his style because it was too much graphite or too whatever, and it can't be inked. And I'm like, he inks it just fine. I ink it just fine. What? Is it that it can't be inked, or is it can't be inked for the page rate you want to pay?
That might be a lot of it too.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering at the time. But he simplified his art, and it became very popular. It's much more cartoony than it was when he was doing stuff for Pinnacle Games and Eon Productions and other companies beforehand. But he was showing, the different techniques of the digital drawing, and I was just like, yeah, now take what Freddie's teaching you here, and now you got what Mark's teaching you. Find the balance between the two.
Yep.
And then there's, DC Guide to Visual Storytelling. Carl Potts is the guy who does that. There you go again. There's, they give you tools. Well, where did you learn how to draw? How to draw comics the Marvel way. Nothing wrong. I'm not dissing that book. There's a lot in there that you can learn, but it's a very limited perspective too.
It is a beginner's book.
Exactly.
That was based on 6 weeks of a John Buscema night class that he was teaching. That Stan went to one of them. It's like, this is interesting. Let's put this in a book. And Stan wrote the words of that thing in like 3 nights, and it was done.
Yeah, and people are still like, "This is the Bible," and I'm like, "This is not. This is for the 10-year-old who's dreaming."
Yeah. I wrote the updated version of that, Stan Lee's How to Draw Comics. It came out 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They approached him to do a new one. They said, we want to update How to Draw Comics the Marvel way and talk about Google SketchUp and Manga Studio and this and that. I said, what the hell is Manga Studio?
Yeah. Stan's just looking there with like deer in the headlights, I'm sure.
Well, he was nearing 90 at the time, and he said, have Campetti do it. He does those seminars. He can sound like me.
Yeah.
So I ended up writing.
It's funny though. I mean, I could just see him. His eyes are probably bulging bigger than his big sunglasses. Like, what is he talking about? SketchUp. What's a SketchUp? What do you do? Put ketchup on it? That's that's another thing. I just got a friend of mine who just sent me something to ink that he did the design work on SketchUp for a motorcycle, and I'm looking at this SketchUp. I'm like, when I get to it, I'm going to have to go look at a Photoshop, or not Photoshop, but a photo of the motorcycle he's talking about, so that I could put all the details over to SketchUp.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with the structure. The structure's there. The structure's fine. But like the details of the engine and how that's going to look and where everything goes, the chain's missing on the wheel of the bike. I need to figure out how that's going to look, if it's on that side or the opposite side of the tire. I need to learn those things. And people go, well, wait a minute, don't you just ink what's there? No, that's what reading a page is. It's a great tool, but it's just one tool. You have to open the whole toolbox.
Yeah. I'm going to have to wrap this up.
Yes, we do.
Times as long as I thought it would.
I love having you here, and thank you so much. And again, I want to let everybody remember to visit glasshousegraphics.com. There we go.
Ta-da!
And take a look at all of his artists. He's got, like you say, he represents almost 200, maybe more than 200 artists, and just wonderful people over there.
May I say that if people are interested in the way I review artwork and talking about what does and doesn't work in drawing, lettering, coloring comics, check davidcampetti.com, which is my blog that I've been doing for 12 years. I don't post on it real often, but basically if I do something up detailed on Facebook that I think is worth sharing to a wider audience, it goes on my blog, and that way it can stay there, and most of it's about creating comics.
Yes, there you go. Yep. And, once again, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank those who came to watch. We had as many as 6 people watching at once, but up and down between 2 and 6 throughout the whole thing. And people came in and out, I'm sure. I wish I had more people from the Alliance to come in and talked with us and given us some more insight. But, it is what it is,
Is this recorded? Can people get back to it?
Yes, it is recorded. It'll be on YouTube. They can visit it after it airs.
Fantastic.
And Philip Burnett, great conversation, really enjoyable. Thank you, Philip, for your questions, and also David Lawrence for coming in and asking questions. Very helpful in the direction of our discussion. And so that's all. Call it a night for tonight. We'll come back some other time, and we'll focus on different aspects like penciling or inking or coloring or lettering or something. Yeah, that would be great. And we'll bring in some of the other editors like Diana Schutz or something. We can invite her in, or somebody else. Coloring would probably be Gregory Wright would be a good choice to bring him in on that for coloring. So, we'll try and get more people in on the editing side, because I know that people like, well, I want to see the cool art. I want to see the artist. I want to talk to the artist. You got to remember, we help build these guys and gals, so, what we have insights too. So hopefully, we'll have some cool stuff to come on down the road, and go visit David at his site, davidcampiti.com and glasshousegraphics.com. All right, man. I'm going to do my sign off real quick. Do you want to just head out now, or do you want to wait until I chat a little bit afterwards?
I'll wait till you're done.
Okay, then. Just doing my thing here. And you know how to reach David now. If you want to reach me, you can reach Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, on Twitter at LewisBrightRave2, at DeviantArt at DeviantArt.com/BrightRaven, on YouTube at Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. To reach me an email specifically for this show, try Quoth the Raven LBR72 at gmail.com. And if you don't reach me that way, try LewisBrightRaven at yahoo.com. On Mondays, we do our comics news and reviews. Wednesdays, we do what I got in the stores this week, and hopefully people will start coming in and letting me know what they bought, and we have more conversation that way. Thursday nights at 9 p.m. is our roundtable talk, where I have a guest like David or someone else or multiple someone else, and we talk about different topics. And Friday nights at 9 is our genre night, where we talk about different genres, movies, science, books, comics, whatever. And this week on Friday, John Norris was one sitting in our chat room, and I will be talking about our favorite animated films that are not Disney or manga. So that'll be Friday tomorrow night. And then on the weekend, starting this week, I'll be back on Saturday for a live draw session where you get to see me ink a certain page. And it will be this page. And this is my pencils, blue lined. This is basically what I did from the sketch. I put it up in blue line and then printed it out. And I'll be inking this Saturday and probably part of Sunday as well. And that is for Michael Pennick's Recovery Incorporated series on, I believe it's on Kickstarter. It might be Indiegogo. But either way, that's where we will be this weekend. So I will see you guys next time. And we appreciate you coming on and watching us. And thanks once again to David for being here. And we'll see you next time.